The great court of Illyria was filled with voices that bounced off the crystal walls like waves in a storm. Scholars, nobles, and curious citizens had gathered for the grand debate of species knowledge, an event held once every cycle. Delegates from dozens of alien worlds had come to share what made their people unique, to boast of their strengths, and to compare their survival traits. The atmosphere was electric, with each species eager to outshine the others. Daniel stood at the center of the court, the only human representative present. He was dressed in the simple, formal wear of his station, a dark uniform with a silver emblem of Earth upon his chest. He had been calm through most of the day, speaking only when called on, listening as the other species described their traditions and biology. He had not expected trouble, but trouble had come the moment he spoke of humans. Humans, Daniel said clearly, his voice carrying across the hall, are unusual among the galaxy's many peoples. We can breed year-round. We do not follow seasonal cycles for reproduction like most of you. It is one of the reasons our numbers are vast and why we have spread across so many environments. The silence that followed was sharp and heavy. Then, as if struck by the absurdity of his claim, the alien court erupted in laughter. "You lie," shouted a noble with scaled skin that shimmered blue and green. "No fragile species could carry such energy without rest. Our cycles are balanced with the seasons of our homeworld," another added. "It is impossible for a body to remain ready without collapse. He seeks only to boast." The crowd jeered, muttering to one another, their disbelief ringing in the air. Daniel stood steady. He had expected doubt, but not the storm of voices that came. Then she rose. Princess Lysera, heir of Illyria, stood from her throne at the far end of the hall. She was tall, her presence commanding, with silver hair that shimmered under the crystal lights and sharp eyes that reflected both pride and curiosity. She was young but known across the empire for her sharp tongue and refusal to be outdone. When she spoke, the court silenced at once. "Human," she said, her voice cold but clear. "You claim something no one here believes. Do you expect us to take your words at face value, when every species knows the body must rest with its world?" Daniel bowed slightly. "I do not ask you to take my words without thought, Princess. I ask you to hear truth. Humans are different. We were shaped by a world of chaos, not gentle cycles. Our kind had to be ready always, for danger never waits for a season." A faint smirk curved Lysera's lips. "You speak boldly, but bold words do not make truth. If your kind can do what you claim, then prove it. Here, before the court." The hall filled with whispers. No one had ever dared challenge a speaker so directly during the gathering. But Lysera was not like other royals. She thrived on challenges, on exposing weakness, and she had no patience for what she believed were lies. Daniel's heart beat steady, though he felt the weight of every gaze upon him. "And how would you have me prove it, Princess?" he asked. "Through trial," she answered swiftly, as if she had planned it all along. "Words mean nothing. Endurance shows truth. We shall test the strength of your body and spirit, and if you survive, perhaps then I will believe." The court erupted again. Half in shock, half in amusement, many leaned forward, eager to see how far this human could go before collapsing. Daniel, however, remained calm. He had faced worse than this on Earth. Trials were nothing new to a human. "I accept your challenge," he said, his voice firm, enough to cut through the noise. "If it is proof you want, I will give it." Lysera's sharp eyes narrowed, a gleam of curiosity flickering beneath her pride. "Very well. Tomorrow, we begin. Let all who doubt watch closely. This human claims his kind can endure beyond reason. Let us see if he survives his own words." The gathering ended soon after, but the whispers lingered long into the night. Many aliens laughed at the thought of a fragile human lasting even a single trial. Others, though fewer, were not so sure. There was something in the human's calmness, in the way he did not flinch under the princess's sharp challenge, that made them wonder. That evening, Daniel walked alone through the guest quarters of the palace. Outside, the twin moons of Illyria shone through crystal arches, bathing the city in silver light. He knew tomorrow would not be simple. The princess was proud, and her people even more so. They would design trials not just to test him, but to break him. Yet he also knew something else. Humanity's strength was not just in body but in spirit. He carried with him the history of his people, the survival of a world that never gave rest. As he looked out over the shining city, he thought of Earth, its storms, its endless dangers, its harsh winters and scorching summers. He thought of how humanity had survived it all, not by waiting for the right time but by always being ready. That was the truth he would show them. Far away in her private chambers, Princess Lysera also stared at the twin moons. She was curious despite herself. This human had spoken with unusual confidence. Many aliens she had challenged had stuttered or backed down, but he had accepted without hesitation. It irritated her and intrigued her. Year-round. She whispered to herself, shaking her head. No creature can be ready always. He will fail. They always fail. But deep within, a flicker of doubt stirred. What if just once someone did not? The stage was set. The human's words had planted seeds of conflict and curiosity in the alien court. Tomorrow, trials would begin, and all of Illyria would watch, to see if humanity's claim was truth or folly. For Daniel, it was not just about proving biology. It was about showing that humanity's strength lay in their endurance, in their will, and in their refusal to yield, even when the galaxy laughed at them. And for Princess Lysera, it was a battle of pride. She could not allow herself to be deceived. But in her heart, she already knew that this human was not like the others. He was calm where others were fearful, steady where others wavered. Perhaps, she thought, this trial would be more than a test. Perhaps it would change everything. The court would soon see. The next morning, the court gathered again. Word of the human's bold claim had spread through the city like fire in dry grass. Crowds lined the crystal streets outside the palace, eager to hear how the strange being from Earth would fare. The great debate was no longer about knowledge. It had become a spectacle of challenge and pride. Daniel stood calmly in the center of the hall, waiting. His dark uniform was the same as yesterday, though his face was set with quiet determination. He had slept lightly, but humans were used to restless nights. Across the court, nobles whispered to each other, their voices filled with amusement. Many expected him to fail before the day was done. Princess Lysera arrived last. She walked with a regal stride, her silver hair catching the light, her sharp gaze fixed on the human who had dared to stand against her. The court bowed as she took her place, and then, with a single lift of her hand, silence fell over the hall. The human claims his kind can endure year-round, Lysera declared. He says their bodies do not follow the cycles that bind all living creatures. Today we test this claim. Let the first trial begin. 2 alien attendants stepped forward, carrying tall staffs of light. They struck them against the crystal floor, and the hall transformed. Walls slid open, revealing a wide chamber filled with obstacles, platforms, and steep climbs. The first trial was one of endurance and strength. Daniel surveyed the course without fear. He had trained on Earth for far harder challenges. Lysera raised her voice again. The human will run this course without pause. He must complete 10 circuits. Any failure and his words will be proven false. Gasps filled the court. 10 circuits would exhaust even the strongest alien competitor. The princess's smile was faint but sharp. She expected him to collapse before half were done. Daniel stepped forward. Begin then, he said simply. The gong sounded, and the trial began. He launched himself into motion, his boots striking the ground with steady rhythm. The first obstacle was a wall twice his height, but he scaled it with ease, pulling himself over with strong arms. The crowd murmured. Few expected a human to move so quickly. Next came narrow beams suspended high above the ground. Daniel balanced carefully, his focus sharp, and crossed without faltering. Then came weighted blocks, which he lifted and carried down the track, his muscles straining but refusing to give way. One lap ended and then another. The aliens watched closely, Some challengers, eager to see him fail, tried the course alongside him. They moved fast at first, but their pace slowed quickly. By the fourth circuit, most had collapsed, panting, their bodies unable to sustain such effort. Yet Daniel kept going. His face glistened with sweat, his breaths grew heavier, but his steps never slowed. Princess Lysera leaned forward on her throne. Her sharp eyes tracked every movement, expecting to see weakness. Instead, she saw persistence. By the seventh lap, silence filled the hall. The human still moved, his body worn but his spirit unbroken. Finally, the 10th circuit ended. Daniel staggered to a halt, his chest rising and falling in deep breaths, but he was still standing. He looked up at the princess and bowed slightly. The first trial is complete. The court erupted with noise. Some were amazed, others angry that their expectation of failure had been shattered. Lysera's lips pressed into a thin line. She had not expected him to endure so long, but she would not yield so easily. She stood again, her voice carrying authority. So the human can run. Endurance of the body is one thing, but can he endure with the mind? The attendants cleared the chamber. A table was brought forward, covered in glowing stones of many shapes and colors. The second trial was a puzzle of ancient design, one said to test concentration beyond reason. "Sit," Lysera commanded. "You will solve as many patterns as you can, but you must not stop. The moment you rest, you fail." Daniel sat calmly at the table. The stones glowed faintly as he touched them, shifting to reveal hidden symbols. The puzzle demanded patience, memory, and focus. The court settled into silence, watching. Minutes passed, then hours. The aliens who attempted the puzzle beside him began to falter. Their concentration slipped, their eyes glazed over, their bodies demanded rest. One by one, they left the table. But Daniel remained, his brow furrowed, his hands moved steadily, his eyes never losing focus. By the fourth hour, even the princess shifted uneasily in her seat. By the sixth, whispers filled the hall. How can he keep going? Does he not tire? No mind can focus this long. Daniel continued. His mind, trained by years of human history, of study, of survival, of persistence, did not yield. At last he solved the final pattern. The stones dimmed, signaling the end. He leaned back, his eyes weary but steady. "The second trial is complete," he said softly. The court was stunned. Nobles looked to one another in disbelief. Lysera clenched her fists at her side. This human had passed 2 trials already, where even her strongest subjects had failed. Still, she lifted her chin. "You endure more than I expected," she admitted, her voice sharp but tinged with reluctant respect. "But endurance alone does not prove your claim. You say your kind is ready always, in body and in spirit. Then we shall test that tomorrow. If you survive the wilderness, perhaps then I will believe you." Gasps filled the hall again. The wilderness beyond the city was harsh and unpredictable. Few ventured into it without long preparation. To send a human there with little notice was almost cruel. Yet Daniel did not flinch. "I accept," he said calmly. "If this is what it takes, then I will endure." The court ended for the day, but the air was alive with whispers. Some now looked at the human with awe, others with suspicion. Lysera herself returned to her chambers, her mind restless. She had wanted him to fail quickly, to expose his words as foolish pride, but he had endured, not just with his body but with his mind. That night, as the moons rose over the crystal city, she stood by her window and thought. "He surprises me," she whispered. "But tomorrow, the wilderness will break him. No one escapes it unscathed." Yet deep within, the same flicker of doubt returned. What if he did not fail? Far away, Daniel sat in silence, preparing himself. The trials were harsh, but they were nothing compared to the chaos of Earth. Tomorrow, he would not just survive. He would prove that humanity's strength was more than words. The wilderness beyond Illyria's shining walls was not a place for the unprepared. Even the proudest nobles rarely set foot outside the city without escorts, supplies, and protection. The forest stretched wide, filled with silver-leaf trees that hid dangerous creatures. Sudden storms rolled down from the mountains with no warning, and rivers swelled without pattern. It was a world as beautiful as it was cruel. At dawn, the court assembled once again, but this time not within the palace. Instead, they gathered at the great eastern gates. A wide balcony overlooked the expanse of forest, its edges lit with the glow of the rising twin suns. The air was sharp and cool, carrying the scent of wet soil and blooming flowers. It looked peaceful, but all present knew the dangers that hid beneath its beauty. Daniel stood at the gates, calm as ever. His uniform was plain, without armor or weapons, for the princess had decreed that he would face the wilderness with little more than his hands and wit. Some nobles smirked at the sight. To them, this was a death sentence. Princess Lysera approached. With her royal guards, her silver hair flowing in the wind, her expression cool, she addressed the court with a clear voice. "Today the human faces his final trial," she said. "He will enter the wilderness without aid. For 3 days and 3 nights he must endure the storms, the beasts, and the hunger. If he returns, alive, then perhaps his words hold truth. If he does not." She let the words linger, her eyes narrowing on him. "Then his boast dies with him." The crowd murmured. Some whispered prayers, others muttered predictions of failure. Daniel simply bowed slightly. "Then I will return in 3 days." Without further words, he stepped through the gates and vanished into the forest. The first hours were quiet. Daniel moved carefully, studying the land as he went. The trees were tall, their bark glowing faintly in the light, their branches sharp as blades. He remembered Earth's wild forests, and though this place was alien, the rhythm of survival was the same. Shelter, water, food, those were the priorities. He found a stream within the first hour, its water clear but fast-moving. He tested it, carefully before drinking. The taste was sharp but safe. Next, he searched for a place to rest. A cluster of thick roots formed a natural hollow where he could build a small shelter. Using fallen branches and large leaves, he constructed a cover against the coming rain. His hands worked steadily, his mind focused. Above, unseen watchers followed his every move. From the palace balcony, nobles observed through crystal lenses. Some scoffed. "He builds like an animal." Others frowned. "Yet he wastes no time." Princess Lysera watched in silence, her sharp gaze never leaving him. She wanted him to stumble, to show weakness. Instead, she saw precision. By evening, dark clouds gathered over the forest. A storm broke suddenly, rain lashing down with a fury that bent the trees. Daniel crouched beneath his shelter, calm despite the thunder. He had lived through storms on Earth, where winds tore houses apart. This was no different. He held his shelter firm, letting the storm pass. Night fell, and with it came the beasts. Strange creatures prowled the undergrowth, 4-legged with eyes glowing faint green. Their growls echoed through the forest. Daniel stayed still, gripping a sharpened stick he had carved from a branch. When one beast drew close, he shouted, suddenly his voice loud and commanding, and thrust the stick into the ground before him. The creature hesitated, growled, and retreated. Humans, he thought, were not prey. On the second day, hunger gnawed at him. He searched for food among the plants, tasting cautiously. Some were bitter and dangerous, others edible enough to keep his strength. He found fruits hanging from low branches and roots hidden beneath the soil. He chewed slowly, forcing his body to accept the strange diet. That afternoon, a river crossing tested him. The waters were fast, pulling with great strength. An alien challenger who had been sent with him at the start tried to cross first. The creature's body, built for cycles of strength and weakness, faltered halfway. With a cry, it was swept under. Daniel, without hesitation, leapt into the water. The current pulled at him, but humans were creatures of endurance. He swam hard, his muscles burning, his mind sharp. He caught the alien before it sank and dragged it to the far bank. Both collapsed onto the soil, gasping for air. The alien looked at him with shock. Why save me? It whispered. Daniel simply answered, because survival means nothing if we abandon each other. From the balcony, Lysera had seen it all. Her chest tightened at the sight. Not only had the human endured the river, he had risked himself to save another. It was a strength of spirit she had not expected. Night came again. This time, the forest lit with strange lights, insects glowing blue as they swarmed. Daniel covered himself with mud to mask his scent, keeping still as they passed. When the skies cleared, he lay back for a moment, staring at the twin moons above. His body ached, but his spirit was steady. This is nothing compared to Earth, he murmured to himself. We endure because we must. On the third day, the true danger came. A great beast, larger than any he had seen before, emerged from the trees. Its body was scaled, its claws sharp, its roar shaking the ground. The alien who had survived the river fled at once, but Daniel stood his ground. He grabbed a long branch, sharpened at both ends, and circled carefully. The beast charged, but Daniel dodged, striking at its side. Again it came, faster, angrier. Again he dodged, rolling across the soil, his stick cutting deep. The battle lasted long, his body bruised and strained, but his will never broke. Finally, with one last thrust, he struck the beast in the throat. It fell, shaking the ground with its weight. Daniel stood over it, his chest heaving, his eyes steady. He did not roar in victory. He did not gloat. He simply breathed, then moved on. Survival was not about pride. It was about endurance. When the third night ended, Daniel returned to the gates of the city. His clothes were torn, his body marked with scratches, but he stood tall. The crowd gasped at the sight. Few had believed he would return. Princess Lysera herself came forward, her sharp eyes locked on his. For the first time, her expression was not cold. It was conflicted, anger, awe, and something else mixed together. You survived, she said softly. Where others faltered, you endured. You faced storms, beasts, and hunger, and you still stand. How? Daniel met her gaze, his voice calm, but firm. Because humans have no choice. On our world, danger does not wait for a season. We are always ready, because we must be. That is our truth. The court was silent. The nobles, who had mocked him before, now looked at him with unease and respect. Lysera's heart, however, beat faster. She had challenged him to break him, yet he had endured everything. And though she did not want to admit it, part of her was moved. The trial was over, but the challenge between them had only just begun. The forest trial had ended, but the memory of it lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. The human had returned alive, his body scratched and tired, but his spirit unbroken. Daniel had proven himself in the eyes of the court, yet Princess Lysera was not ready to accept defeat so easily. For 2 nights she could not rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing tall after fighting the scaled beast, saw him pull the drowning alien from the river, saw him endure storms without complaint. He was not supposed to succeed. He was supposed to collapse, to reveal the weakness she believed all humans carried. But he had not. And so, on the third night after his return, she made a choice. If she was to understand the truth of humans, she would have to see it not from a throne or a balcony, but with her own eyes by walking beside him. The next morning, Lysera appeared in the council chamber dressed not in royal silks, but in traveling garb. Her guards gasped and her advisors tried to stop her. Princess, it is too dangerous. The human survived by chance. You must not follow his path into the wild. She silenced them with a single glance. If he can survive, then so can I. I will not be a ruler who hides behind crystal walls while others prove their words. I will see with my own eyes what gives this human his strength. And so she declared it before the court. I, Princess Lysera, will accompany the human into the wilderness. If he speaks truth, I will see it. If he lies, I will expose it. The court was thrown into chaos. Some were outraged, others fearful, but her word was law. Daniel, standing at the edge of the chamber, was surprised. He bowed respectfully, though his voice carried caution. If you come with me, princess, you must accept the risks. Out there, titles and crowns mean nothing, only survival matters. Her chin lifted proudly. Then you will see that I do not falter. They left at dawn, with only simple packs and no guards. The gates closed behind them, leaving the city shining in the distance. The forest stretched ahead, green and endless. Lysera walked with grace at first, her steps proud. But soon the forest began to test her. The soil was uneven, the branches sharp, and insects buzzed around her. Her royal boots were not made for such ground, and before long her pace slowed. Daniel noticed but said nothing. He let her learn, watching carefully in case she stumbled. When they reached a river, she tried to cross on her own, but slipped on the wet stones. Daniel caught her arm quickly, steadying her before she fell. I did not ask for your help, she snapped, embarrassed. You didn't need to, he answered calmly. But survival doesn't wait for pride. She glared at him, but she did not pull away. That night they made camp beneath the roots of an ancient tree. Daniel built the fire with practiced hands while Lysera watched. She had never seen someone so skilled with so little. Her people relied on tools, on prepared shelters, on supplies carried by servants. But this human used only what the land gave him. As they sat by the fire, the forest alive with distant howls, Lysera finally asked, "How do you do this? How do you keep moving without end? My people rest when our bodies demand it, but you—" She studied him carefully, her silver eyes sharp in the firelight. "You seem as though you could go on forever." Daniel smiled faintly, though his face was tired. "We don't go on forever. We suffer, we ache, we bleed, but we keep going anyway. That is what makes us human. On Earth, there were no safe seasons. Storms came without warning. Predators hunted without mercy. If we stopped even for a little while, we would die. So we learned to keep moving no matter how tired we were." Lysera looked into the flames, his words settling deep in her chest. She thought of her people, who lived by cycles, who grew strong only at certain times and weak at others. The idea of being ready always seemed impossible, until now. The second day tested her pride further. As the sun rose high, the forest grew hot, the air thick and heavy. Lysera's steps slowed, her breath quickened. She wanted to rest, to stop, under the shade of a tree, but Daniel pressed on steadily. "You may rest if you wish," he said without judgment. "No," she insisted, lifting her chin. "I will not fall behind." By midday, her legs trembled and she stumbled over a root. Daniel caught her again. This time she did not snap at him. Instead, she looked at him with frustration. "Why are you still strong when I am not?" "Because strength is not only in the body," he replied.
"It is in the will. You stop when your body says you cannot go further. Humans keep going even when the body begs us to stop." She said nothing more, but the truth of his words burned in her thoughts. That evening, danger struck. A pack of
wild beasts crept into their camp, drawn by the smell of the fire. Their eyes glowed green in the shadows, their growls low and hungry. Lysera froze, her hand reaching for a weapon she did not have. Daniel stepped forward, holding only a sharpened branch. His voice rose in a fierce shout, his stance firm. The beasts hesitated. He waved the fire before them, striking the ground with sparks. One lunged, but Daniel struck swiftly, his branch stabbing at its snout. The beast yelped and retreated. The others backed away, unwilling to test him further. Lysera's heart pounded. She had faced battles before, but always with guards and armor. This man had faced beasts with nothing but a stick and his will. When the danger passed, she whispered, "You are not like any creature I have known." Daniel simply replied, "That is why I told you, humans are always ready." On the third day, they climbed a ridge that overlooked the endless forest. The twin suns painted the land in gold, and the city was only a faint glimmer in the distance. Lysera stood beside him, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, but her eyes wide with wonder. "I thought you were lying," she admitted softly. "I thought no being could endure as you claim, but now I have seen it. You did not falter even when I did. You saved me when I would have fallen. You fought when I froze. She hesitated, her pride warring with her honesty. "I was wrong." Daniel looked at her, his expression calm but kind. "It is not about being wrong, Princess. It is about learning. Humanity learned because we had to. And now you have seen what makes us endure." For the first time, Lysera lowered her gaze. "Perhaps my people could learn from yours." The moment was quiet, almost fragile. The proud princess who had mocked him and called him a liar now stood humbled beside him. Her silver eyes softened. She turned back toward the city, her voice steady again but gentler. "When we return, I will tell the court what I have seen. They may not believe your words, but they will believe mine." Daniel nodded. "Then perhaps they will understand," and for the first time Lysera smiled. Not sharp and mocking, but small and true. The trial of pride was over, but something new had begun between them. Not rivalry, not hostility, something closer to respect, and perhaps something even deeper. Though neither spoke it aloud, the wilderness had tested them both, and both had changed. The return to Illyria's crystal gates was nothing like the first departure. When Daniel and Princess Lysera had left the city days earlier, most nobles and citizens had expected the human to fail, or not return at all. Now, as the gates opened and the two figures stepped into view, a stunned silence spread through the gathered crowd. Daniel walked steadily, his dark uniform torn at the edges, his skin marked with scratches, but his steps were strong and even. Beside him walked Lysera, her traveling garb stained from the wilderness, her silver hair tangled, her proud chin lifted. The sight of their princess in such a state shocked the court more than the human's survival, but the sharp fire in her eyes silenced any whispers. They entered the grand hall. The nobles assembled in anticipation. The high council sat, in rows, their crystal crowns glowing faintly in the light. At the far end, Lysera's father, King Thalion, waited. His gaze was stern, his voice booming as he spoke. "My daughter, human, you left our gates with challenge and pride. Now you return. Speak. What truth have you found in the wild?" Lysera stepped forward, her voice strong, though quieter than usual. The court leaned forward, expecting her to cut down the human with sharp words to dismiss his claim as folly. But instead, she said something no one expected. "He speaks the truth." Gasps filled the hall. Nobles turned to each other in disbelief. The king narrowed his eyes, his voice low. "Explain." Lysera's silver eyes swept across the room. "I doubted him, as all of you did. I believed no creature could endure without rest, that no body could remain ready always. I challenged him to prove his words. And not only did he endure, he showed me what makes his people strong. Storms struck without warning. Beasts attacked with fury. Hunger and exhaustion weighed on us both. And yet..." She turned her gaze. To Daniel, her voice softening. He never stopped. His body was tired, but his will refused to bend. Even when I faltered, he kept going. Even when I would have fallen, he carried me forward. The court was silent, stunned by the admission. The proud princess, who had never bowed her head to any rival, now spoke with respect of a human. Daniel remained quiet, allowing her words to fill the hall. He had no need to boast. His actions had spoken already. King Thalion studied his daughter carefully. Then he turned to the human. "Is this true? Do your people endure as she claims?" Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "It is true. On Earth, we had no choice. Our world gave no season of peace. Storms came at any time. Hunger struck without pattern. Predators hunted us without pause. To survive, we became creatures of constant readiness. We can endure when others rest. We can fight when others falter. That is what it means to be human." The words carried through the chamber like steady thunder. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a noble at the side muttered, "If this is true, then humans are more dangerous than we believed." Another countered, "Not dangerous, valuable. Allies who never rest would be strong indeed." Murmurs spread quickly, dividing the court. Some were fearful, others curious, but all were shaken. The king raised his hand, silencing the whispers. "My daughter, you have tested this claim yourself, and you, human, have proven it before all. Then let it be written in the records of Illyria. Humans endure beyond reason. They are unlike us, bound not to cycles but to survival itself." A ripple of awe passed through the hall. The human's truth was no longer a boast. It was now law, sealed by the crown. When the court dismissed, Daniel and Lysera stood alone for a moment near the crystal arches. The city stretched beyond, shining, under the twin suns. "You have changed everything," Lysera said quietly, her voice softer than the sharp tones she usually used. "Not just for yourself, but for your people. The court will no longer laugh at humans. They will watch you, some with respect, some with fear." Daniel nodded. "It does not matter which. What matters is that they know the truth." She turned to him, her silver eyes lingering on his face. "I challenged you because I could not accept the thought that anyone could be stronger than us. But you are not stronger in the way I imagined. You were stronger because you refused to stop. And that is harder to face than any blade." For the first time, her pride bent. She lowered her head slightly. "I was wrong, Daniel, and I do not say such words lightly." He gave a small smile. "You were not wrong, Princess. You were testing me, and perhaps I needed to be tested." A faint laugh escaped her lips, surprising even herself. "Perhaps, but know this, human. You may have won my respect, but you have also earned my watchful eye. I will not let you or your kind slip quietly into our empire. If you are always ready, then so am I." Her words carried a challenge still, but no malice. For the first time, it was not the voice of an enemy, but of a rival who had grown into something more, a companion perhaps, or even a friend. That evening, the city celebrated the close of the gathering. Lights filled the sky, music echoed through the crystal streets, and the people spoke of nothing but the human who had endured the princess's trials. Children played, pretending to fight beasts with sticks. Merchants sold carvings of humans, standing tall against storms. A story had been born, one that would spread across worlds. Daniel walked quietly through the festival, watching the people laugh and dance. He did not seek the spotlight. He only wanted to see the faces of those who now understood something of humanity's strength. At the edge of the square, Lysera found him again. She no longer wore her royal armor of pride. Instead, she looked almost at ease, her silver hair loose, her expression lighter than before. "They already tell tales of you," she said. "By tomorrow they will call you the Endless Human." Daniel chuckled softly. "I would rather they remember Earth, not me. My people are more than one man." Lysera tilted her head, studying him. "Perhaps, but stories always begin with one name, and yours will be remembered." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the sounds of music and laughter. Then Lysera spoke again, her voice quieter. "When you first claimed that humans could breed year-round, I thought it was arrogance, but now I see it differently. It is not arrogance. It is necessity. Your kind was shaped to always be ready, always enduring. That is why you can do what we cannot." Daniel met her gaze, steady and calm. "And now you know why I never lied." She smiled faintly. The sharp edges of her pride softened at last. "Yes, you never lied." When the night ended and the festival lights dimmed, Daniel stood once more at the edge of the city, looking toward the wild forests beyond. He knew challenges would come again, doubts would return, but he also knew he had planted something stronger than words in the hearts of the Illyrians. Respect. And for Princess Lysera, The challenge that began with scorn had ended with truth. She had called him a liar, demanded proof, and watched him endure every trial. In the end, it was not just Daniel who had been tested. It was her. She had seen the truth with her own eyes, and she would never forget it. The galaxy, too, would not forget. Humans were different, humans were ready always, humans endured, and now the stars themselves would learn what that meant.